The letter to me was telling myself, if you don't read this and heed it, you're going to die sick, broke, and having broken a lot of promises to people. That's what finally motivated me to get my act together and clean my life up and change what I could and accept what I couldn't, and find ways to use it for the benefit of other people.
That's something that, not a lot of people think about that. When there is a web page and a headline and words, you just kind of go there and think, what's in it for me? But those words had to be carefully chosen. And you go to that website years later and the words are different. You listen to some kind of radio on the ad and someone didn't just sit down and say, well, how do I promote my neck device? Someone had to carefully craft the words and figure out, these words make sense. This is too short or too long. And so when, you perform the service, you teach people how to do this thing called copywriting. Where do people fall short in this process? What's like a big mistake when it comes to creating the ideal words to sell something?
Such a good question, because it's all about the right words in the right order at the right time for the right person, addressing the right problem and pain. And that's a lot of things you got to get right. And I think most people fall short in that they don't think about the customer they're writing to. They think they do. In fact, the biggest shortfall is a client that I encounter that'll say, I am my market. No, you're not. If you're selling stuff to your market, you're automatically weird, because most people don't sell stuff to the people like that, in that way. So you got to be able to put yourself in their position and understand the pain that you're helping them to relieve and how they feel that pain. So like for weight loss, fitness people, like fitness trainers, gurus, dietitians, they tend to miss the mark, because when they're marketing, they talk about the health benefits in terms of your heart health, your pulmonary health, your strength, your flexibility. That's not what people are interested in. What they're interested in is, how do I look when I get out of the shower and look in the mirror? How do I look in a bathing suit? Do I look attractive to the other people that see me? That's what they're concerned about. And so you have to address the pain from what concerns them. I want to look good. And then you can help them at the same time with the information or the training that'll get them slimmed down, get their heart back in shape, get their lungs back in full performance mode. But you're not going to get there if you don't address the pain the way they feel it, not the way you think they should feel it.
Right. That's huge, that it's easy to just say, I want to focus on the positive, and you buy my course, you buy my product, and look at all these things you'll have because I'm so great. And the reality is that people are focused on their present and their pain and the negative, and they need that thing to wake them up. I mean, you think of, when a politician says, look at all this crime, that's what gets the attention. And then you kind of grab them there and then you go from there. But that's huge, that focus on the pain, have the empathy. And then you're also saying about this need to sort of drill down and go to the deeper meaning and go to, well, weight loss and the facts and figures and the numbers and the chemicals, that's all great. But then what's really the reason why? Well, they're losing weight that way they can impress people. And there's like this deeper need that when you do the deep thinking, you say, why is this and why is this? And you get so far down that it feels like you're reading a page out of their diary, and they're like, wow, no one's even understood me in this way. And maybe I haven't even been able to put it in these words just yet. And so what it all makes me think of is this importance of story, right? And like, I know that you're a big like Dave Ramsey fan, and Dave Ramsey, he'll like just reuse the same stories. And instead of just saying something to you about money or getting your finances in order, he'll like tell some kind of story, and that will stick a lot better. And so I know that you go a lot into stories in your book here. Like there's a cool exercise you said about like you write your life story and have it just full of the misery, the pity party, right?
Yeah.
And then you go back and rewrite it and then make it kind of more of the roller coaster, the hero's journey. So you've got kind of the sadness out of the way, and then now you can have the highs and lows with a positive ending. So can you kind of tell us what you have to say about story? Because that's kind of a tricky thing to learn, right? It's kind of like the further, it's like learning humor. The more you learn, the less you understand. So tell us about what we should be applying as far as storytelling.
Well, yeah. And so when you're writing copy, one of the things you got to do is keep the story short. George Lucas, I think one time described it as, here's how you tell a story in a film. You have some characters, you get them up a tree, you shake the tree, then you get them back down into the tree again. That's the most simplified version of a storytelling exercise I've ever heard. But that exercise you mentioned about writing your life as a tragedy and then writing it as a triumph, the rules I give people when I have them do that exercise is I say, write it as a tragedy, but only tell the truth. You can't make anything up. You have to tell true things from your life and frame it as a tragedy. And you do the same thing as a triumphant hero's journey story, and it has to be true. And then I ask people when they're done, which version is true? And they answer naturally both. And so my point is, the story of your life is not your life. It's just your story. So most people tend to lean toward the negative version of their own story, whether they admit it or not. Internally, that's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about all their shortcomings, faults, miseries, problems, woes. And I just think it's better for us in the long run if we focus on the triumphant hero's journey story, because that gives us hope. No matter how bad things are getting, we can always think to ourselves, well, this is the low point. There's a better place in front of me. And that's what depression is all about, really, is the inability to imagine a hopeful future. So when you find yourself depressed, that's where you are. You're just in a gray space. You can't see any way out. I've been there myself. And this is all stuff I taught copywriters and marketers and entrepreneurs for so long. But then I had to apply it to myself when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. You were talking about being nervous earlier, and I was going to make a joke about I'm so nervous I'm shaking. But that was, at first, the diagnosis was disturbing, but it wasn't frightening. Then it quickly became more scary. And I reached a point where I was hopeless, really. And I tried everything I could think of. I tried all the positive thinking. I love Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield and Zig Ziglar and all those guys. Armand Morin's another positive thinking guru in the world of business. And all those people are people that I admire and trust. But their stuff wasn't helping me. It wasn't getting me out of the place of helplessness. Although I did have a conversation with Mr. Morin at one point, and he said to me, I recount this in the book, though I didn't name him because it didn't sound very flattering. He said to me, well, you got it. Now how are you going to use it?
I remember that. Yeah. In this, I'm going to have to go and reread that knowing that it was him, but that sounds like him.
And it pissed me off when he said that. But then I quickly realized, well, he's right. I got to figure out how can this be a good thing? What can I learn from it? So I had to reframe it. So the book, Read This or Die, Persuading Yourself to a Better Life, was really the result of me realizing the only way I was going to be able to help myself is I couldn't change the disease. I tried all the stuff I knew to do that. It's incurable and it's degenerative, so I couldn't change it. Although there may be hope on the horizon through genetic therapy in the future. So I'm hopeful for that. But I also realized, look, I can't change it. So what can I change? I can change my representation of it in my own mind, my representation of it. So I began asking myself different questions like, well, how can I use this? What can I learn from it? What am I willing to do to make it better? Is there anything I can do to make it better? Can I make it better for other people? Can it teach me things that'll allow me to function in the world in a better way? So learning to ask myself better questions and persuade myself that there was a reason to keep living, because I did reach a point where I was in so much pain and misery and helplessness that I was ready to take my own life. I literally had a couple bottles of pills and a bottle of whiskey sitting on the bedside beside me. I didn't say whiskey in the book. My editor suggested I change it to water. He didn't want me giving recipes to people on how to do themselves in, but I thought it's common enough knowledge. Anyway, editorial decisions, but it was whiskey and 2 bottles of pills. I didn't take any of it. I decided not to do that because it would hurt other people. It was in my pain, put an end to my pain, but cause endless misery to other people in my life. So I decided that's a reason worth living, because I'm at least pleasant enough to have around that people would be sorry if I was gone. That's a starting point. You gotta take what you can find.
Yeah.
I was a pretty miserable SOB at that point in time. But I shaped up and I found not only a reason to live, but a way to live, even if I have this degenerative disease. And it got lots worse. In fact, I am a little shaky right now, but I was so bad at one point last year, I couldn't walk. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't feed myself. I was really pretty much helpless much of the time. I started having seizures as well. So I finished the book, by the way, during that period. So what happens next is a missing chapter from the book. And the missing chapter is, because I was able to turn my thinking around, even in that miserable state, I couldn't change the disease, but I could change my attitude, which is everything. Viktor Frankl said that the last freedom man has is his ability to think about the circumstances he's in and change his own thoughts. So that's what I did. And I developed hope, and believe it or not, I was able to be happy and joyous during that period of time. And because of that, I got into a place where I was willing to consider a therapy that I had ruled out before. I thought my life's already bad enough. I don't need anybody drilling holes in my head and putting stuff in my brain. But I had deep brain stimulation surgery in December because I was ready for it. I was able to do it. I was able to overcome my fear, just go in and do it. And when I switched it on a month later, it changed my life. So like it wound the clock back 7 or 8 years. I'm able to walk, drive, dress myself, take care of my everyday needs with no problem. I'm a little shaky sometimes. It affects my voice a little bit, but the point is I persuaded myself to a better quality of life, even though I couldn't change my external circumstances one iota. And it enabled me, oddly enough, it enabled me to change it afterwards. I had to change me first. That's the point of the book. And that's why it works for anybody. I believe if you read the book, it works for anybody. You don't have to have a big problem like a disease. It could be a smaller challenge like diet, exercise, relationship with family, those kinds, whatever, the problems we all have universally, regardless of our age or our physical condition.
That's huge, and that's inspiring. And there were so many things that came to mind reading your book here, such as this idea of solving problems before they get worse, right? Like if your health is bad or your weight's getting there, you don't have to wait until things are really bad and really bleak. Just get to it now. And even the fact that if you're aware of this problem or you're thinking of this problem now, maybe that's a sign to continue to pursue it. And other things that came to mind are things that, we all have problems. Like you mentioned how Lynn, your wife, had a heart attack at some point. And, we all have these kind of health issues going on. And you mentioned how you got kind of greater empathy for other people with some of these other diseases. And then even when you're mentioning there about kind of your process and your journey, there was kind of the like two branching paths, right? There's kind of the Robin Williams did the suicide path, right? You said I have Parkinson's, let me just end it and take the quick way out. And then Michael J. Fox went to the path of let me do the hard thing and let me say, well, this disease will get to me eventually, but today's not the day yet. And in the meantime, there's still work to be done. I can still get my message out. And, as you said a few minutes ago too, modern science is always figuring these things out. And so I've been following you over the years, even though we only talk every now and then, but like I saw the video where you had the device and you were like shaking and you pushed the button and like it really went down to nothing. And so yeah, whatever the problem that holds us back or the series of problems that are in front of us, there's kind of the work's not done yet, there is hope. And so for some reason, when I was reading your book, what kind of came to mind is this idea that there's basically two factors, right? There's the things in your control and the things not in your control. And then there's the things to change and the things to keep the same. And then in my mind, I kind of imagine like 4 boxes, right? And to kind of sort those things through and be like, well, this doesn't need changing, this does need changing. And then these other problems are more of like, well, I need to think differently about them and kind of think about my reality differently. And so that's what came to me. And so is there, what sort of surprises have come to you in this kind of, this medical and business journey? Is there anything worth talking about as far as like what really woke you up and was unexpected?
Well, first of all, when I had the treatment, I published the video because it was significant to me and my family, but I didn't expect to get 1 million views in that video. It's the most viewed video I've ever had. And I figured nobody would really want to watch it except people who knew me. I was wrong about that. So that was a surprise. Another surprise was how many people have contacted me because of that video saying I've got Parkinson's or my father's got it or somebody I love's got it or they've got MS or something like that. Does this apply? How did I find out more about this? So I've kind of become an evangelist for this procedure because the reason I delayed it so long is because I was afraid of it. I was just scared. And, misery can sometimes push you past the point of fear. You're like, well, I'm less afraid of that than I am of this crap I'm dealing with right now. So I've been able to talk to a lot of people and there's been 6 people so far who went ahead and had the procedure because of the video I published and the conversation that we had. It's been very surprising and gratifying. Most interesting of all has been Boston Scientific, the people who make the bionics that are now in my body. They saw the video too, and they're talking to me now about helping them market this to Parkinson's patients because they have a pretty low take rate on the procedure. The reason so few people know about it is because it's so scary. People don't want to consider it. And they said, you're just the kind of person we're looking for. You know how to persuade people that they should consider doing it. And, it worked. The surgery's got like a 99% success rate. So it's pretty safe and it's pretty effective. Not everybody is eligible for it and everybody has the same results that I do. Of course, that's just life. But anybody who has something like this or knows somebody who does, I can say consider it. And, I love that idea of the 4 boxes that you were spelling out. I should have talked to you before I published the book, because if I had, that would have ended up in the book. But next edition, maybe.
Second edition, yes. Well, what wonderful. And so yeah, so what comes to mind there is just that there's always this worry of being in this day and age of being overly curated, right? And like you've done a really good job, I think, of working your faith into your marketing and then working your Parkinson's. And there's that worry of kind of like Armin said, well, how can you use this, right? How can you maximize the kind of Parkinson's aspect of it? And it seems to me like if someone's having this kind of inner battle of, well, am I oversharing, or am I like too curated, or am I like a scumbag for like kind of co-opting or hijacking this cause? It seems like the way to overcome that worry is to kind of try things out in little bits and get the feedback, and then think like, well, what's the objective and what am I doing to help people? Is it just like, look at me and love me and pay attention to me? Well, that's what you don't want. But if there's like an end goal or persuasion to be done, and in this case, it is to kind of raise awareness, not just for Parkinson's, but like this specific procedure, then it seems like that's more of the noble path, the better objective, and to overcome this kind of like worry about being overly curated. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? On like the struggle of kind of oversharing versus like, I don't know, just being a good person, not a good person.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because it's something I think about constantly, and I've thought about it for many years. Obviously, I've been diagnosed almost 12 years now. And so I've always had that thought in my mind of, am I using this like a scumbag? Like, am I just playing on people's sympathies? And the answer is no. I didn't want to tell anybody about it for the longest time, because I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the guy who is healthy, happy, rich, be like me. I'm totally successful. And of course, that person doesn't exist, maybe only once in history as he existed. And so I've learned to be a lot more transparent than I ever thought I would be. And I try to weigh how much is transparency and when does it become pornography of a sort. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play on people's sympathies for the sake of playing on their sympathy. But if I can help people in the process, then I go for it. And, sometimes I've missed. I think I look back at some things. I think, oh, maybe I didn't need to do that. But it's called a vulnerability hangover. I learned there's a term for it, according to Brene Brown. But, as far as working everything in, like copywriting and Parkinson's and marketing and faith and all those things, I just at some point just realized I got to be who I am, because I'm no good at faking it and trying to be somebody else. I tried that and it didn't work very well. It was a lot of pressure. So there's a apocryphal story that Oscar Wilde said, you should be yourself because everyone else is taken. I don't think he actually said it, but it's a good quotation. So copywriting came into this whole story. I forgot the pivotal part of the book is I wrote myself a sales letter. That's what I do. That's how I persuade people. I write sales letters. So I wrote myself a sales letter about how I had to change my life and do what I could, change the things I could, and accept the things I couldn't change, as you so eloquently described in the Eisenhower Matrix 4-box thing.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant idea. Dang it. And the headline of the sales letter was, read this or die, which I swiped from another famous copywriter who's passed away now, Jim Rutz. We actually became friends before he passed. And I just always admired that campaign that he wrote, read this or die. It was about some kind of vitamin thing or something. But the letter to me was telling myself, if you don't read this and heed it, you're going to die sick, broke, and having broken a lot of promises to people. And that's what finally motivated me to get my act together and clean my life up and change what I could and accept what I couldn't, and find ways to use it for the benefit of other people. That's what the book is about. I walked through the process of how to do it. And people who buy the book now, we have a free video mini course that walks through the process of writing your own letter if you want to yourself. It doesn't have to be a full-on sales letter, but I've had numerous people tell me they read the book and just wrote themselves a letter because of what they read in the book. They said that was kind of inspiring. I want to do that too. and it helped them clarify why they wanted to change things in their lives. And that's what the purpose of the book is.
That's huge. That's amazing. You stumbled across a new self-help technique, right? Of using copywriting to awaken yourself to the pain that maybe you don't even want to put into words, and then
Right.
bring yourself on this storytelling, on this hero journey to first of all, what will happen if you continue on this path, but then also how you have a better life in front of you. And you think about that a lot with just there's the way that it is, and then there's the way that it could be, and that can for sure be misused, right? Of using your imagination for the wrong purposes and being delusional, but you
Yeah.
have to get there somehow. And you're reminding me of our late friend Rick Butts, and I said something to him once, and I didn't realize it was profound, but then he repeated it back to me, and it was this idea of, if there's a product that you want to sell, don't make the product first and then make a sales letter, write the sales letter first. And I was like, I didn't even realize I said that. And so and because that way you can put all the fun crazy, like over the top things that you wish existed into
Yeah.
your product, and then kind of maybe revise later, but like meet yourself that half, like part way, by doing it a little bit out of order. So it's a similar idea, right? Of like imagining the life that you want and writing this sort of sales letter. And so you said that people who get the book, Read This or Die, can claim their access to this extra course. And that's what I love about seeing what you're up to. Is I'm always like, I watch like a random video or podcast episode of yours, and I'm like, I'll use that just from him just talking about what he's got going on. And so as we're winding down our conversation here, like, what am I not asking you? What is something that we need to really be discussing to really leave an impact with the people watching and listening?
Well, I think a question you haven't asked me is, what do you do if you're in a terrible circumstance and you can't do anything to change it, and you have a hard time changing the way you feel about it? Like I've sat by the bedside of people who have cancer, and dying of cancer is not a pretty thing. The end, like our friend Rick, that's what got him in the end. And the end is pretty ugly. So you got to ask yourself, there's some hope, there's some deeper meaning in life. And I'm not here to tell anybody what to believe or what to think or what their faith should be, but I'm suggesting that having faith that the universe is a much bigger, deeper, more meaningful, more purposeful place than you imagine it is can be helpful. It can help you through the darkest of hours. I don't pretend to understand. I used to be very definitive about how I described that reality, and I'm less so now because I've pushed the boundaries of what I used to believe and found that they're pretty easy to push through. But I know we're here for a purpose. There's a beneficent force in the universe. Some people might choose to call it God or universe or source. I don't care what you call it. It's there. There's a reason that things happen in our lives. Sometimes it's a good reason, sometimes it's not. There's always a meaning. There's a reason that you and I are here. We're here to help other people, I believe, to connect with other people in community and family. And if that's the last thing you have to hold on to, it's okay, because in my mind, it's also the first reason you're here. So the last thing can be the first. And it is in my belief system. So you didn't ask me that, but you asked me what you didn't ask. So there you go.
And I'm glad that I did not ask you, but then also asked you at the same time. And it's like, remember Quantum Leap? They said like, what's leaping Sam Beckett around? It's God, fate,
the universe,
love,
time.
whatever. And so whatever that is for whoever is out there, figure out what that meaning is. Figure out if it can be a positive meaning, especially if you're kind of sinking into those depths of despair. So, like I said, whenever I need a sort of a pick me up, I go in and listen to an episode of your podcast. And you're the reason why I have a podcast, because I would listen in and I would kind of just hear your inner radio DJ just having fun and explaining these complex concepts in simple ways that were kind of like humorous and fun, and in a way that we can learn and understand, but then also apply. Because you mentioned in the book that sometimes you fall into that trap of like reading, like you're in your RV at some national park and you were just like buried in a book. And Lynn said, go out and like experience life. That's what we're here to do. So there's many, life is such a mixed bag. There's so many things that we could have, would have, should have done. And we're all just doing the best we can, but it helps to have kind of the the guide and to have more information and knowledge. That way we can kind of do what needs to be done in the limited amount of time that we have left. And so if someone wants to check out the book, Read This or Die, they want to check out the Ray Edwards show and Ray Edwards and what he has going on, what is the call to action, to use copywriting terms? Where can and where should people be going right this instant?
Right this instant, I'd say go to readthisorddiebook.com, which will show you how to get the access to the mini course once you get the book. And then beyond that, you can go to rayedwards.com to find all things Ray Edwards, including the book. If you forget that long URL, readthisorddiebook.com, you can just go to rayedwards.com.
Do you have a favorite quote, lesson, or just final piece of advice to put a cap on this thing?
Favorite quote? Well, that's a tough one, although it's not that tough.
It's tough because there's so many choices.
Yeah. There's a quote. I don't have this committed to memory, but it was one of my favorites I ran across during the writing of the book. It's the one from Pascal at the beginning of the book in the introduction. Pascal said, "People are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they have themselves discovered than by those which have come into the mind of others." And so for me, that means you got to do your own thinking. And it also means if you're going to convince somebody of something, you got to let them come, you got to lead them to the conclusion. You know, I have a framework called the Pastor Framework for writing copy. It's in this book. I use it to write the letter I wrote to myself. And I chose the word pastor, not because it makes people think of preachers, but because the original meaning was shepherd. So when you're pastoring someone, you're being a shepherd, you're leading them to the still waters, to the green grass, to safety, giving them food and water, protection from attackers. You're a shepherd. You lead them to a good decision. So when you're selling as a marketer in business, I want to lead people to a good decision. And sometimes the decision is not to buy from me. Sometimes you need to buy something else. Sometimes it is to buy from me. So as you think about that, it applies not only to sales, but it applies to relationships, to your relationship with your spouse, with your friends, people in your community. God knows we could use a little bit more of that insight as we try to lead people to different decisions about politics and race and getting along with one another. So it's just something to think about. You're never going to change somebody's mind by arguing with them on Facebook. That's how I like to sum it up. But you might ask them a question or two that makes them start thinking about a different line of action.
Right. Nuance, connection, empathy, align with where they're at and guide them or lead them or show them a better way. Don't just hit them over the head with saying your way's wrong and my way's right. You won't get anywhere that way. I love it.
Exactly.